Yikes. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're going to try something new. I'm going to start doing some audio commentary. So this is the Tour of America's Dairylands, just day one, 2024. It's a Cat 2-3 men, fairly fast field. A pretty simple course on this one. This is Janesville. Actually simplified from the year before. It's only 4 corners. We used to have a nice little chicane in the middle before turn 2. That actually was a pretty good spot last year to make moves or move up. But this year it's just 4 corners, definitely faster on the start-finish straight as a result. So you can see we're on the back half of the lap. The northern portion here that you see is actually the start-finish straight. It's on a little bit of an uphill, but still usually pretty fast through this section every lap. And definitely the site of some shenanigans as well, as you saw in the first part. I am coming into this race about 2.5 to 3 weeks after a fairly major crash. I actually stripped part of my hub in a sprint, which led to me, spiraling out of control very quickly after that and landing on my ass. You wouldn't believe it, but it was black, absolutely black and blue, and it's mostly healed by this point. But to be honest, I'm in this race because I signed up and I'm out visiting a friend and his family, and we're just here to see what can happen given the fitness and injury status. Like I said, I've done this race before in the past, but it has a little bit of different dynamic this time around. And actually one of the things that's happening and that I'm noticing really early on in this race is that it's pretty spicy in terms of you get a lot of people who are just kind of weaving all over the road. There's not a whole lot of organization. We don't have big groups of teams. Everyone's just kind of doing their own thing. And that's causing a lot of bunches before some of these corners. If you go watch other people's footage, like Will Harden, you can see in the pros, nobody bunches these corners. They're totally railable, totally pedalable for the most part. And the pavement's actually pretty good despite what it looks like. And so, yeah, and also another thing to note, Cat 2-3 is a mixed field, and you get a variety of fitness levels. You see this guy not closing this gap, and this is pretty early on in the race. Now I mentioned that I was injured. One of the things I really can't do during this race is get up out of the saddle. I basically can't really sprint, and so what I'm doing is I'm relying on a little bit people to close these kind of gaps, but I'm also trying to anticipate these bunches in the corners and then come around with speed. So I basically am stuck in the saddle. And so, I kind of know that my chances of winning field sprints and that kind of thing is out of the question. But you never know what kind of breakaway might form, especially later in the race. And, I can still do decent power, and I'm not really feeling too bad despite what the heart rate says. My max heart rate's about 185. And so I'm actually not feeling bad at all during this race, but my heart rate's elevated because I just haven't had the intensity I'm used to having. So you can see even in this corner, group bunches up, and as a result, I just kind of move back closer to it. You can definitely see early on that people are taking some silly risk for kind of no reason. Cutting inside when maybe it's not really important to, not staying on that fast outside line. Tactics are a thing, and there are a lot of preems in this race, so guys are kind of motivated to always have an outside exit. You'll see here in another lap that we do a fair bit of preem work, and so as a result we get these big surges followed by this big kind of plunging up. And this is a little unusual in crit racing. Sometimes there are bunches, but for the most part, especially in 2-3 races, you've got motivated people and the race is fast, which is nice and safe. This did not feel safe. Didn't feel particularly dangerous, but a lot of portions of this early part of the race were not safe. In fact, before I turned the camera on, which was about maybe 3 or 4 laps in, there had actually already been a crash at the bottom turn here, turn 3. And you can kind of see why. In fact, as we come into this turn, just pay attention. First of all, it's bunching up. People are kind of taking their mind off the road for a half second. Going into it 3 or 4 wide for whatever reason, pulling way down, and so the people on the outside occasionally get shoved over, and you can see those barriers come in just a little bit, and it's just enough that if you didn't anticipate being shoved to the outside, you can end up getting tangled up there. I don't think there were any other crashes, and I don't think it was that big of one before, but it's really the only danger point on the course. So here we go, back into another acceleration, faster lap. And again, I am really just trying to save matches, not be put in a situation where I really have to sprint really hard or something like that. Not ideal, but we're getting by. So it's not really that bad at this point in the race. And so I'm kind of thinking ahead and starting to think about, well, you know, what kind of dangerous thing has to happen off the front here before I decide to try to time trial my way off. Incidentally, for those of you who don't know, I actually am kind of a time trialist. I've won a couple of state championships in my age category for that. I enjoy time trials. I had a really good one earlier this season at Tour de Gila. Again, in the 2-3 field, getting about, I think I got 21st or something like that out of a really competitive field over a fairly hilly time trial as well. And that was without a time trial bike. So I feel pretty good about that. Of course, nobody had one. That's the funny part of that story. But yeah, that's definitely my strength. And when you play to your strengths, that's usually how you do well or maybe even win. So here we go, bunching up again, and you know, it's just part of crit racing. And I kind of noticed that, like, I don't really want to be behind this guy. He's been slowing down sometimes, and you know, I want to be up towards the front in case something happens. It's still fairly hard to do that. And I believe we pretty much don't really have wind to speak of. You can look at the flags on the side, and there's a little bit going across here, but both straights, which are the fast parts, really aren't that much affected. And you can see here I'm just taking advantage of this outside line and kind of coming through. But it's still slowing down here, and you can see my power is not even that high. I'm doing 300 watts to do that, and occasionally getting shoved to the outside because I'm doing it too, which isn't great. This guy next to me, you can kind of hear it. His bike was in need of repair. Also, of the people I've ever raced against, this dude had his head on a swivel, almost like a bobblehead. And I think that's good. I like races with race awareness. On the other hand, sometimes looking behind, looking to the side when we're going downhill at 40 miles an hour makes me a little nervous. So I raced with him again the next day. Again, he never caused any problems or anything. Just, sometimes riders stick out to you. You can't help but notice them. So here we go again, and again, these laps are on cream laps. You'll see 2 or 3 guys duking it out at the front, and there were a lot. I think something like 6 or 7 creams in this race. And as you can see, laps are fairly fast. Like maybe, I don't know, we can time it here, but maybe like a minute 10, minute 20, something like that. I mean, it's not, these aren't long laps. And so there were a lot of preems. It definitely felt like it, and guys are doing that. So here I am just trying to get a look at the front, stay a little sheltered from the wind side, but also just trying to see where things are at. And almost immediately getting people coming by and stuff like that, getting bumped a little by that guy, and looking ahead again and trying to anticipate what's going on. But this is what you get. That bunch up causes people to take the inside line, get chopped a little bit, and it's really not great. I like this CMU guy. He and I had a good day the next day as well. It looked like he was up there duking it out for at least one of these. And, so that was kind of a cool person to mark. But again, like, it's so tough in these races. You come from wherever you're normally racing. But, you know, I'm coming from Arizona. Like, nobody that I know is in this race. It's hard to know who's going to be strong and who's not. You really have to do your research if you want to be super competitive with that. And some of these guys are 2s, some of these guys are 3s, so it's even harder to sort of figure out where people might be. And so I'm in no rush to care about what's going on. I'm also pretty aware that I've got enough power to handle the race, you know. Sometimes, I mean, I've been racing for 20 years off and on, and there's a point where you sort of understand the nature of what the worst part of the race could be. And if you've made it through that part, you know, you kind of mentally relax just a little because you kind of know, well, I'm not in any realistic drop. You're going to get this bunch up, and so this is the pattern. So yeah, I'm not in any real danger here. So we're coming up in on, maybe 20 minutes into a 50-minute race. But I'm starting to feel good enough that, my heart rate's come down a little bit, feel a little more settled. Things are getting a little more safe in the corners. People are taking less dive bomb-y kind of risks. And so this is actually a part where I start thinking I'd actually like to maybe try my hand in an attack, or at least look for an opportunity to be a little closer to the front. And, if it's not going to be in one of these turns, then the next best place is probably to follow a move on the start-finish straight. See, you can see this, like, these guys ahead of me, they're not doing anything wrong, but if you go look at the pro videos, or even just, highly skilled Cat 3 stuff, you'll see that people just don't leave those, like, bike and a half to 2 bike length gaps on those turns. And what it really is first day nerves, probably, and like, you've never raced this course, that turn can be a little intimidating. So here we go, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, oh, I see a guy go up left. That's the CMU guy, and I'm like, right, I gotta follow this. So here I am, seeing this nice little gap, and wham, bam, here we go. Onto the ground, second crash in 3 weeks. Definitely in some pain here. The guy in front of me, it seemed like he had the wind knocked out of him. He may have been more injured than me, but I'm not a happy camper at this point. Also totally tangled up in bikes. Guy behind me also came with me, and I was laying on top of somebody as well. Got the medics over, got checked out. Takes like 5-6 minutes. You can see this race though. Look at the left. The race is completely strung out, and the tail end of it is just shattered. I mean, you got guys like 10 bike lengths off. So here I am in the pits. They're about to release some other guys. They get released before the mechanic fixes my levers, and the official's gonna let me back in here. So at this point, like, I can feel that I'm injured, but it doesn't seem too bad. By the way, there's also a break up the road. You're gonna see 3 guys come past in a second. And so there they go. There's the break. They have a little bit of a gap at this point, but we're probably about 35 minutes in, maybe. So the breakaway of 3 is up the road, and they let me back in, and you can see there's some indecision on the front about what to do with it. So yeah, after you crash, I mean, if you're not bleeding or in the ER, one of the best things to do is actually just jump right back into bike racing, and it really helps you deal with the psychology of things. But it's more than just the psychology of going down. In this case, like, I recognize that I'm injured and my rotor is also bent a little bit. And you just never know what else could have gone wrong with the bike, right? You're eager to get back in, but do the typical check. Tires have pressure and all that, but you just don't know what else is up with things. So I'm a little nervous about it, but after a lap or 2, I kind of settle back in. It's also hard to go from getting let back in to jumping right back on the pack. So here goes a move up the left. Is a couple laps later. Pretty excited by this, but again, I have 0 sprint, so I'm kind of hoping I can just muscle my way into this, which I do fairly successfully. Like, I hold this high pace at the front, but you can see, everyone else in front of me just gets up out of the saddle and just easily gets in there and kind of gaps me. And so again, like, I can't really be involved in that, but I can try to hold the pace and maybe, stay involved at some level. So this is in an attempt to bring back the 3. And so now I'm on the pointy end, but I'm also in pain, and I have no sprint, and my brakes rubbing. It's great. So many excuses to go on. But otherwise, I mean, the problem now is that because I jumped back in, my heart rate's elevated, and it's getting harder to maintain that kind of speed. So I let this gap fill. I let the guys come around me. And at this point, as I start to breathe harder from that kind of effort, I'm recognizing, like, actually, I'm probably actually hurt. And so the value of staying in and risking, more crashes and more pain is kind of going down. And so I just kind of let myself get filtered back, and I'm hoping to fight another day.